I had to protect myself and my baby from negative energy, SIL explained when she uninvited my wife to her baby shower. A week later, we received her call. I recently married the love of my life, Fiona, and life felt like a perfect dream. Every morning I'd wake up next to her feeling like the luckiest man alive. We'd been together for 3 years before tying the knot, and our relationship had always been filled with laughter, understanding, and deep love. Coming from a close-knit family, I was especially grateful that Fiona got along wonderfully with everyone, particularly my brother Matthew, who's been my best friend since childhood. Matthew and I have always been inseparable. Growing up, we shared everything, from toys to secrets to dreams about our future families. When he met Amber 2 years ago, I was thrilled for him. She was ambitious, organized, and seemed to make him happy, though I noticed early on that she could be particular about things. She had this way of always needing to be in control, planning everything down to the minute, and sometimes getting visibly frustrated when things didn't go exactly as she'd envisioned. The day everything changed started normally enough. We'd planned a casual lunch at a cozy Italian place downtown that Matthew and I had been going to since college. Amber, now 6 months pregnant with their first child, my future nephew, was glowing despite her occasional complaints about swollen ankles and back pain. The conversation flowed easily as we shared plates of pasta and discussed baby names. Matthew was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement about becoming a father, his eyes lighting up every time he talked about the nursery they were preparing. That's when he looked at me with that nostalgic smile I knew so well and said, "Man, I hope the baby turns out like you. You were such a cute kid." I could still picture those old family photos he was probably thinking of, me with my gap-toothed grin and perpetually skinned knees, always ready for the next adventure. It was a sweet moment of brotherly affection, something typical of our relationship. But Amber's reaction changed everything. Her face hardened immediately, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. "No," she drew out the word in that way people do when they're trying to sound casual but clearly aren't. "I'd much rather he turns out like you." Her tone was dismissive, almost hostile. Matthew, ever the peacemaker, tried to smooth things over. "No, seriously," he insisted. "We'd be lucky if the kid was like my brother. He was such a nice and cute kid." He even pulled out his phone, probably planning to show some old photos we'd recently digitized from our childhood albums. But Amber wasn't having it. She turned to me, her eyes sharp and calculating, and said with this artificial sweetness, "No, but you're so much more handsome," before adding that pointed, "No offense." The way she said it made it clear she meant every bit of offense possible. The tension at the table was palpable. Our waiter, approaching with fresh ground pepper, actually hesitated before coming closer. Fiona, who had been quietly enjoying her carbonara, set down her fork, her body language shifting into what I recognized as her protective stance. That's when Fiona made her joke. "Well, as long as the baby doesn't look like Amber, we should be fine." She delivered it with a light tone and a small laugh, clearly trying to break the tension with humor, the way we often did in our family. What happened next was like watching a storm form in fast motion. Amber's face went through a series of expressions, first shock, then rage, then this cold, calculated anger that was somehow worse than any outburst. Her cheeks flushed red, her knuckles whitening around her water glass. "What the hell does that mean?" she spat, her voice trembling with fury. "That's extremely rude. We're not close enough for jokes like that." She didn't just stop there. She pushed her chair back with such force it scraped loudly against the floor, causing nearby diners to turn and stare. "I can't believe you would say something so insensitive to a pregnant woman," she continued, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea how hormonal and sensitive I am right now? This is completely unacceptable." Tears started forming in her eyes, whether from genuine hurt or manipulation, I couldn't tell. She grabbed her purse and stood up, one hand protectively over her belly as if Fiona's words had been a physical attack. "I don't want anything to do with people who would treat me this way during my pregnancy," she declared. "This is supposed to be a special time for me, and you're ruining it." Matthew looked torn between staying to smooth things over and following his upset pregnant wife. He shot me an apologetic look before hurrying after Amber, who was already making her way to the door. practically shoving past a waitress carrying a full tray. The rest of the restaurant had gone quiet, the kind of uncomfortable silence that follows a public scene. Fiona and I sat there, our half-eaten meals growing cold, trying to process what had just happened. Our perfect family dynamic had shattered in the space of a few minutes over what should have been a forgettable exchange of banter. Days later, I received a long text message from Amber formally disinviting Fiona from the baby shower. The message was scathing, filled with accusations about Fiona's cruelty and lack of sensitivity toward pregnant women. She even went so far as to suggest that Fiona might create a negative energy that could affect the baby. Fiona, hurt but maintaining her dignity, said she wouldn't have wanted to attend anyway. But I could see how much this was affecting her. She'd been excited about becoming an aunt, had already bought several thoughtful gifts for the baby, and had been planning to help with the shower preparations. Now I find myself in an impossible position. My brother has been my best friend for my entire life. We've never missed any important moments in each other's lives. The thought of not being there when he becomes a father for the first time feels wrong on every level. But how can I attend when my wife has been so blatantly excluded and insulted? Matthew has been texting me regularly, trying to smooth things over, suggesting that maybe after some time passes, Amber will calm down and we can all reconcile. But knowing Amber's personality and seeing how she's handled this situation, I'm not so sure. This feels like a turning point, one of those moments where family dynamics shift permanently, and I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. Every option seems wrong. If I attend the shower, I'm essentially validating Amber's treatment of my wife. If I don't go, I'm missing one of the most important moments of my brother's life. I'm trapped between my loyalty to my brother and my devotion to my wife, and for the first time in my life, I don't know how to be both a good brother and a good husband. Update 1. I read through the comments from everyone who responded, and I appreciate all the different perspectives. After some reflection, I realized that this whole situation could have been handled better. I mean, all of us would have acted differently, but in the heat of the moment, things just spiraled out of control. I need to emphasize something about my wife, Fiona. She's not the mean-spirited person some might imagine from this incident. Yes, her sense of humor can occasionally have a sharp edge, but at her core, she's one of the most compassionate and genuine people I've ever known. She's the type of person who remembers everyone's birthdays, who brings soup to sick neighbors, who stays up late helping friends through rough patches. That's who she really is, and that's why I fell in love with her. The joke she made that day, while admittedly poorly timed, was so far from her true character. After much contemplation, I decided to have a heart-to-heart with Fiona about the baby shower situation. We sat down one evening after dinner and I explained my dilemma. Before I could even finish, she surprised me with her response. "I don't want to be the reason you miss it. If you want to go, just go," she said, her voice soft but firm. She even offered to reach out to Amber with an apology, though she made it clear she wouldn't attend the shower even if re-invited. The environment would be too uncomfortable, and she didn't want to risk causing any more tension during what should be a joyous occasion. Looking at her that evening, seeing her willingness to step aside for my relationship with my brother despite being hurt herself, I knew I couldn't attend without her. This wasn't about taking sides or making a statement. It was about standing by my wife, supporting her through an uncomfortable situation that had spiraled far beyond its origins. Some might say I was choosing my wife over my brother, but I saw it differently. I was choosing to honor my marriage vows, to stand by my partner through good times and bad. When I called my brother to explain my decision, his response showed me exactly why we've always been so close. There was no anger, no guilt-tripping, no attempt to change my mind. Instead, he simply said, "I get it, man, don't worry about it." His understanding meant the world to me. He even tried to lighten the mood, saying, "We'll save you some food and I'll drop it off later," followed by a playful suggestion that I could claim the world's shortest COVID, just long enough for the baby shower but miraculously recovered the next day. His ability to handle the situation with such grace and understanding only reinforced that I'd made the right decision in being honest with him. However, what happened at the baby shower was far worse than anything I could have anticipated. My cousin sent me a video of the event, and watching it felt like a punch to the gut. The shower was held in my mother's backyard, decorated beautifully with pale blue and silver balloons, fresh flowers, and elegant table settings. Everything looked perfect until Amber decided to make her speech. She stood up holding her glass of sparkling cider. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she began, her voice carrying across the garden. "Well, almost everyone." The pause that followed was heavy with meaning, and I could see several guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "Some of you might have noticed that my sister-in-law Fiona isn't here today," Amber continued, her voice taking on a wounded tone that seemed carefully cultivated. "I wanted to address this because I believe in being honest with family." She then launched into a detailed account of the restaurant incident, but her version was dramatically different from reality. According to Amber, Fiona had deliberately tried to humiliate her, making cruel comments about her appearance while she was in a vulnerable pregnant state. "Can you imagine?" Amber's voice cracked with emotion. "Someone being so insensitive to a pregnant woman, making jokes about how my baby shouldn't look like me." She wiped away tears that seemed to appear on cue. "I had to protect myself and my baby from that kind of negative energy. My doctor says stress isn't good for the baby, and I couldn't risk having someone so toxic around during this special time." The video showed my mother's face during this speech, a mixture of concern and confusion. She knew Fiona, knew her character, but Amber's performance was compelling. My cousin later told me that Amber went on for almost 15 minutes, painting herself as the victim of cruel treatment while simultaneously spreading subtle implications about Fiona's character. The effects of Amber's speech were immediate and far-reaching. Family members who had known and liked Fiona for years started sending concerned messages. Some relatives began sharing stories on social media about toxic in-laws and protecting your peace during pregnancy, with obvious implications. My aunt, who had always adored Fiona, called to ask if everything was okay in our marriage, suggesting that Fiona might benefit from counseling to address her obvious issues with maternal figures. The impact on Fiona was devastating. She's always cared deeply about what others think of her, and watching her reputation being systematically destroyed was heartbreaking. She started crying herself to sleep at night, something I'd never seen her do before. During the day, she put on a brave face, but I could see how each new message or social media post cut deep. One night, I found her sitting in our home office, staring at old family photos from Christmas last year when everyone had been happy and getting along. "I never meant to cause all this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It was just a stupid joke. How did it turn into this?" The situation has created a rift in our family that seems to grow wider by the day. My brother, caught between his pregnant wife and his brother, has become increasingly distant. Our weekly calls have dwindled to occasional texts. Our parents are trying to stay neutral, but clearly feel torn. Even extended family gatherings have become complicated, with people taking sides and tensions simmering beneath polite surfaces. What started as a single thoughtless joke has evolved into something that threatens to permanently alter our family dynamics. Amber's performance at the baby shower wasn't just about excluding Fiona. It was about ensuring that the narrative of what happened would be controlled by her version of events, making it increasingly difficult for any future reconciliation. As I watch my wife struggle with the fallout and see my relationship with my brother becoming more strained, I can't help but wonder how we'll move forward from this. The impending birth of my nephew, which should be a joyous occasion bringing our family closer together, has instead become a symbol of division and hurt feelings. The question now isn't just about attending a baby shower. It's about how we can possibly rebuild these broken relationships and whether some damages might be too deep to repair. Update 2. A week has passed since I shared my story, and your comments have given me a lot to think about. I realized we needed someone with perspective and wisdom to help navigate this situation, and that person was my mom. She's always been the family peacekeeper, the one who could smooth over conflicts and help us see different viewpoints, so I knew her intervention could make a difference. After discussing it with Fiona, we decided to drive to my parents' house that Sunday afternoon. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed my mom watching from the kitchen window, her face etched with concern. She must have sensed something was wrong when I called earlier asking if we could come over. I started explaining everything: the lunch at the Italian restaurant, Fiona's joke, Amber's reaction, and the subsequent fallout. As I spoke, I could see my mom's expression shifting from concern to disappointment. She listened intently, occasionally glancing at Fiona, who sat quietly beside me. When I finished, my mom's response wasn't what I expected. Instead of the immediate support I'd hoped for, she fixed me with a look I hadn't seen since I was a teenager in trouble. "Why didn't you step in earlier?" she asked, her voice carrying that particular mix of love and disappointment that only mothers can achieve. "You should have managed this situation before it escalated to this point." My dad, typically more reserved in family matters, surprisingly spoke up. "Son," he said, leaning forward in his chair, "when you're married, you have to be proactive in protecting both your wife and your extended family relationships. Waiting until things get this bad isn't the way to handle it." Their criticism, though well-intentioned, felt like a heavy weight on my shoulders. I could feel their judgment, not just about this situation, but about my ability to handle adult relationships and family dynamics. The pressure of trying to keep everyone happy while being scrutinized by my parents was overwhelming. Fiona, sensing my distress, spoke up for the first time since we'd arrived. She explained her perspective, her voice steady despite her obvious emotion. She talked about how her joke, though poorly timed, wasn't meant to hurt anyone, and how she'd been struggling with the backlash and isolation since the incident. My mom's expression softened as she listened to Fiona. After a moment of silence, she suggested that Fiona should send Amber a heartfelt message, explaining her side and apologizing for any unintended hurt. Despite her uncertainty about whether Amber would even read it, Fiona agreed. That evening, sitting at our parents' dining room table, Fiona crafted a careful, sincere message to Amber. She spent over an hour writing and rewriting, wanting to strike the right tone. My mom occasionally offered suggestions, helping to phrase things in a way that would be received well by someone in Amber's emotional state. The days that followed were tense. Every phone notification made us jump, wondering if it was a response from Amber. The strain was evident in every family interaction. Sunday dinners at my parents' house, once a cherished tradition, became awkward affairs. My mom tried to maintain normalcy, but the elephant in the room was impossible to ignore. Then, unexpectedly, Amber called Fiona. When Fiona's phone lit up with Amber's name, I watched my wife's face pale. She stepped into our home office to take the call, and I could see her packing through the glass door, her free hand fidgeting nervously with her necklace. To our amazement, Amber began the conversation with an apology. She opened up about her pregnancy struggles, admitting that she'd been feeling incredibly self-conscious about her changing body. My wife's joke, though not malicious, had hit a raw nerve during a vulnerable time. This confession led to a deeper conversation between them. Amber revealed that my brother and our parents had helped her see things from a different perspective. She admitted something surprising. Fiona's joke hadn't actually hurt her as deeply as she'd pretended. Rather, she'd used the incident as an opportunity to center attention on herself during her pregnancy, a decision she now regretted. My brother called shortly after, and our conversation helped piece together more of what had happened behind the scenes. He shared how he'd wanted to intervene earlier, but had been walking a delicate line, trying to support his pregnant wife while also maintaining family harmony. He explained how our parents, particularly our mom, had played a crucial role in helping Amber understand the bigger picture. The aftermath of this resolution brought unexpected changes to our family dynamics. Our regular family gatherings resumed, but with a new level of understanding and sensitivity. Fiona and Amber began building a genuine friendship, bonding over their shared experience of joining our family and navigating its complexities. My relationship with my parents also evolved. While their initial disappointment had stung, I came to appreciate their wisdom and guidance. They had pushed me to be a better husband and brother, even when it was uncomfortable to hear their criticism. The Sunday dinners at my parents' house became special again, but different. There was a new depth to our conversations, a greater appreciation for each other's feelings and perspectives. My mom still made her famous apple pie, but now it represented not just comfort, but healing and growth. Looking back at that difficult period, I realize how close we came to letting a single incident permanently damage our family bonds. The experience taught me valuable lessons about marriage, family, and conflict resolution. Most importantly, it showed me that even the most challenging family situations can be overcome with patience, understanding, and the willingness to be vulnerable. As our family prepares to welcome its newest member, there's a shared sense of gratitude for having weathered this storm together. The incident that threatened to tear us apart ultimately brought us closer, teaching us all important lessons about love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family.